Well, let me tell you about the Oregon Trail and what it means to not only MEC, but to the whole industry. Oregon Trail is to the educational software business, which is a very significant business now, as the silent movies were to the movie industry. Oregon Trail not only defined educational computing, it defined a whole new industry.
In the middle 70s, MEC was instrumental in delivering timeshare services to the state of Minnesota schools. Schools were able to rent or purchase teletypes and dial in via acoustic couplers, dial in the phone, plug it into the coupler, and were able to access the computer. They all shared the computer, thus time sharing. Oregon Trail was a very simple program. Oregon Trail was all text.
Imagine now that you are going to go on the hunting scene in the Oregon Trail. You don't have any graphics. All you can do is be told that there's a deer running across the screen, and I shouldn't say screen, running across the scene. How do you shoot? You shoot by typing B-A-N-G, return.
Good eating tonight. That was the response if they really had successfully typed bang for the hunt. Otherwise, they would go hungry.
Of course, with the teletype machine, the only all of feedback you received was when the print head typed "good eating tonight." But beyond that, the program didn't provide any sound.
The origin of Oregon Trail is interesting. At a time when a young student teacher was trying to think of a way to interest his social studies class in the westward movement, he was laying out a simulation to be played by the kids as they studied the travel along the Oregon Trail.
And I noticed that my two pals who were math teachers brought a computer home on the weekends that connected to a large computer system that the Minneapolis schools had. So I said, well, there must be some way we can use the computer to help kids understand history as well. And they said, yeah, let's go to work on it. And out of that came the initial program, the Oregon Trail. This is before the era of the personal computer.
That was the first time that Oregon Trail came to life 25 years ago.
In 1979, we began working with, at that time, a microcomputer called the Apple II. What we initially did was to take the Oregon Trail timeshare version, bring it down to the Apple II. Now this was the first time that we had a chance to use graphics. So we added graphics to the travel map. You had a little wagon that plodded along the western states of the United States, and you had some very crude but effective graphics in hunting. This was the first time where you could actually see the outline of what looked like a deer as it moved across the screen.
We had a palette that included 6 colors: green, purple, orange, blue, black, and white. These colors don't really lend themselves to realistic people or animals, so it was a challenge to do any version of the Oregon Trail that included wildlife and people and natural settings in anything other than cartoony style, which is basically what all of the Apple II graphics ended up looking like. They had big fat pixels that were very difficult to manipulate.
First of all, hunting is the most interesting part to kids. The first Macintosh version of the product is where we actually implemented drawn animated animals and have added landscapes behind or in front of the animals, where you were actually hunting. As we went to CD-ROM, we again greatly enhanced the type of imagery that we included in the product because we had more space to do that.
The gunshots you hear are made by real guns, but the hail is actually marbles being dropped on a table.
In Oregon Trail 2, there's a very detailed model that deals with things that spoil. And if you have salt, you can cure the meat so that it'll last longer. But if you're out on the trail and it's 80 degrees or above and you've got raw meat in the back of the wagon, you can imagine what's going to happen to it over time, and it's not a pretty sight.
When we made Oregon Trail 2, that was when the educational content really mushroomed. I spent about a year doing research in depth, and the number of landmarks expanded from around 15 to more than 200 of them along different trails, not just the Oregon Trail. Now we had the California Trail and the Mormon Trail as well.
All of the forts and towns in Oregon Trail 2 were created using a 3D rendering program. After we created the initial renderings of the scenes, we composited backgrounds in using photographic imagery. We put skies in that matched the different weather conditions, and we composited a scene in the background that matched the geographic location of the particular fort or town. All of the people in Oregon Trail 2 were created using video technology. We had actual people, which were mostly actors and mech staff, in the studio in period costumes. We filmed them in various poses and doing various things in historical context with props of that period.
With the Apple IIe, research was done to discover which popular folk tunes of the day were sung along the trail, and then the melodies of those tunes were played as beeps and buzzes. Of particular interest is the last song, which is Viva la Compagnie, sung by mech staff, whose only requirement was that they didn't know how to sing.
Let every good fellow now join the song. Viva la Compagnie! Success to each other.
As a matter of fact, when your wagon wheel breaks, it's really a piece of celery.
How a simulation program differs from other sorts of computer entertainment software is that not even the people who programmed it really know what's going to happen. There are environmental variables like the weather and random events that influence what happens to you, and your decisions involving those events cascade to the point where I don't know how to win the game myself, for sure.
Rafting was a very important part of the experience for the immigrant. In the original Oregon Trail, on the timeshare system, as well as on the original Apple II version, we did not have rafting. We decided to include it in the version that we did in the middle 80s. We decided to take an approach which was overhead. So you saw your raft on the screen and you would watch rocks and obstacles coming in from the edge of the screen. In the Macintosh version of the product, we decided to take a forward-looking approach so that you saw your raft and you saw the Columbia River Valley opening up in front of you, and the rocks were now coming at you. You could turn your raft from side to side by moving the mouse, which would allow you to negotiate the river. In Oregon Trail 2, we went back to an overhead view, but we lengthened the segments, we made them more challenging, we made them more interesting, and included historical accuracy. Many of our players will enjoy going through the rapids, but few have ever made it through without tipping their raft.
Awards in the educational software business, almost synonymous with Oregon Trail. Every year, Oregon Trail wins an award. We're pleased to get the Cody Award from the Software Publishers Association. Certainly the Parents' Choice Award was something we were proud to receive for Oregon Trail.
I think one of the reasons that people continue to stay with the Oregon Trail throughout the years is the very fact that it is a realistic simulation. The decisions that you make while running the program matter. If you make good decisions, you thrive, and if you make poor decisions, you can suffer from that. And I think that gives a real degree of power in the hands of the kids that are using it. They can make life and death decisions that affect the outcome of the character they're playing in the Oregon Trail.
Well, you kind of feel in charge, and you have to manage your money because you only have so much and you don't want to spend too much.
You got more of a variety of things to do.
Mostly everything looked realistic.
We do know that the Western theme, the westward movement theme, has always been intriguing to kids. We do know that the simulation is an excellent model, and it produces a different result every time the youngster goes through the program. We do know that that makes for replayability.
In future editions of the Oregon Trail, you'll hear more and more sound effects,
How you doing?
more dramatic performances from the actors, and full theater quality sound from the soundtrack.
It's really neat to play, and you should try it.
Oregon Trail is a favorite. Oregon Trail has a large following. Oregon Trail will continue to exist for the long-term future.
It's more interesting because you can actually see and do the things that you just be reading out of a textbook.
We always dream that we want to put the program together in as most realistic and elaborate way as we can, and the reality of it is the program we produce is somewhat of a balance between what's doable and what we really would like to see. I guess we'd all like to put reality and the universe on a disc, and it just has never been possible, but maybe it will be sometime.